We cannot ignore the enduring threat posed by ISIS and al-Qaeda in Africa. Without sustained pressure, these vicious terrorists will reconstitute and continue to threaten America. President Trump was absolutely right to approve strikes against ISIS leadership targets in Somalia in recent weeks. Our adversaries view their fight against America as a global fight. We see their efforts playing out across Europe and Africa in particular. Now is not the time for an American withdrawal from these theaters.
Now, everything we do at the United States Africa Command has one overarching goal in mind: achieving peace through strength. Now, this requires three things: a clear understanding of national security threats, a robust and dependable network of like-minded allies and partners, and appropriate resourcing to match military requirements. Now, as I've said in previous testimony, Africa remains a nexus theater from which the United States cannot shift its gaze. It is home to terrorists who take advantage of conditions in Africa to grow and export their ideology. ISIS controls their global network from Somalia. It is where the Chinese Communist Party actively works to change the international rules-based order as a stepping stone to become the global hegemon. And it's where the Russian Federation seizes opportunities created by chaos and instability. Now, to protect our homeland and the United States' interests, we must deter these nations and their malign actors from their goals on the African continent. Many of our security and economic interests overlap with those of our African and European partners. Successful outcomes enabled by burden sharing are beneficial for all. And as a posture-limited theater, AFRICOM, we establish strength and work towards peace by enhancing the security capabilities of our African partners through a robust system of alliances, exercises, training events, security cooperation, and foreign military sales programs are the backbone of our military activities on the continent. Through these activities, our forces lead by example with a warrior ethos and stand by our partners and enhance trust in the United States military. So the United States Africa Command seeks to match these capabilities with the current and emerging threats to ensure the security of our forces while advancing American interests. Intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance aircraft, crisis response forces, counter-unmanned aerial system technology, and integrated air missile defense platforms are critical to accomplish our mission. Ladies and gentlemen, I welcome your advocacy in ensuring that the necessary tools are in AFRICOM's hands. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to be here today, and I look forward to your questions.
Okay, thank you. General Langley, the Trump administration has conducted multiple airstrikes against al-Shabaab targets since taking office. What's your current assessment of the threat that al-Shabaab poses to our national interest and specifically to the U.S. homeland?
Senator, al-Shabaab is especially a heightened terrorist threat, namely because they're colluding with the Houthis across from Yemen. And so we're watching that closely. The President and the Secretary of Defense has given me expanded authorities. I can talk about those details as far as expanded authorities, but I will say we're hitting them hard. I have now had the capability to hit them harder.
Okay, al-Shabaab is in the Horn of Africa on the East Coast. There's obviously other terrorists operating throughout Africa associated with al-Qaeda or the Islamic State. What's your assessment of the threats that all those terrorists on the African continent pose, and again specifically pose to the U.S. homeland?
Senator, left unchecked, they will have a direct threat on the homeland, whether it's just their networks or even their ideology. We remember 1 January 2025, what happened in New Orleans. Still, there are some that have been indoctrinated by this false ideology of Islam.
Okay. General Cavola, coming back to you, outside of your AOR, but I think perhaps with some follow-on effects, the Assad tyranny fell late last year. That has imperiled Russia's access to its naval base in Syria. There have been reports that Russia is looking to replace that base elsewhere in the Mediterranean, including potentially in Libya. How do you assess the situation in the Mediterranean and Russia's access to the Mediterranean since the fall of Assad?
Senator, they've suffered a big loss. They've suffered the ability to maintain sustained maritime operations in the Eastern Mediterranean. It's much more difficult for them now. They are searching, and I'll let Mike talk about this if you'd like to, sir. They're searching for alternative basing to replace Tartus, which they've mainly lost on the north shore of Africa. They've failed so far to achieve a long-term agreement for a major base. So this will be significant. It's significant not only because we have a reduced presence of submarines, Russian submarines in the Eastern Mediterranean now. It's also surface vessels that find it harder to do sustained operations. And finally, it's much more difficult for Russia to sustain the operations, both overt and covert operations that they're doing in Africa without those bases. And the Alliance and U.S.-UCOM are both taking actions to try to make sure we keep them boxed.
General Langley, anything to add?
Yes, Senator. I watched Maghreb closely. Russia now does have initiatives because that is NATO's southern flank, from Morocco to Algeria and even Tunisia and Libya. I engage with them closely for shared objectives of denying the militarization of NATO's southern flank.
There have been recent news reports that the Pentagon is considering combining AFRICOM and EUCOM into one command. For both of you, what is your best military advice on the strategic, operational, and resource implications of such a merger? General Langley?
Senator, I won't speculate on the evolving policy, but I will say this. I'll just give comparison of the relevance of AFRICOM in our mission. Back in 2007, when we were stood up, we looked at the challenges across the globe, and especially the challenge of terrorism. At that time, the global presence of terrorism on the African continent was 2%. Senator, today it's 43%. And then even adding on to a geostrategic type of perspective of our great power competitions, both Russia Federation and the Chinese Communist Party activities on the African continent is grand. So my responsibilities are great. So for a combat commander, it would be a daunting task for integration.
So would you agree that General Cavalli, that the challenges, as General Langley put it, have increased in Africa, not decreased, and making it even more important that this combatant command continues?
Ma'am, the challenges in Africa have increased exponentially over the last 10 years. Not just the terrorism that was there during the previous period of the last 20 years, but the increasing activity of Russia and China. Yeah, there are a lot of problems there, ma'am, and I'm satisfied with the problems I have in EUCOM.
Would you like to share your thoughts on yet another potential change being contemplated by the administration, and that is to give up our role as NATO's Supreme Allied Commander?
Yes, ma'am. I think that would bring some challenges in terms of nuclear command and control. It would put us in a position where in an Article 5 situation, we could have, for the first time since the First World War, large numbers of American troops under non-U.S. command. So I think those are things that would have to be considered carefully.
Giving up this command, in fact, could really endanger our national security. That's what I hear you saying. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I'm very concerned about the rise of ISIS in the Sahel. That is a serious issue that we need to attend to, that we're talking about great power competition, China, Russia. We can't forget about terrorism. Is that correct?
Senator, that's correct. And the rise of ISIS by numbers in the Sahel, really more focused on the ISIS element that's in Somalia because of their networks. In the Sahel, they're growing in number, but not so much in capability. But we are still engaged, especially in coastal West Africa, of like-minded countries to deter that from the outside in.
Thank you.
Thank you for
Mr. Chairman.
that. Okay, well, you can't imagine how frustrating it seems to me that this mineral-rich continent has not been able to move to a utilization of the resources to benefit the people there. After all this time, it's a puzzle that we haven't unwound up.
General Langley, have you had specific comments from any of your counterparts about the withdrawal of USAID from Africa? Have they commented to you like, why are you doing this? Or
Ranking Member, thanks for that question. I went to the Munich Security Conference about a month ago, or greater than a month ago, and after I got my direction from the Secretary of Defense, what my priorities were, especially counterterrorism and also to deter China and their military activities on the continent, it kind of refined my mission. Then I had to come up with my narrative to engage these countries, be very transparent and straight talk of that we're going through the pause and we're in a reflection period of assessing what has worked in the past and what's going to work in the future. And what's going in the future will be more targeted to what their needs are, but they also need to be able to build towards a sense of independent operations. I expressed this and talked to Cote d'Ivoire, their MOD, and even in Ghana, the new president-elect, President Mahama. They understood that and also carried on that narrative. They appreciated me being transparent. Carried on that narrative when I went to Morocco as well, when we delivered the helicopters, and they understand it. And so it's more of a burden sharing type message, and also a regimented message of getting towards the host nation coming to the point of independent operations.
thank you, Mr.